Hello again. I'm so glad you're here because today we're talking about boundaries. We're talking about boundaries as a service provider, as a business owner, and also a little bit just as people. So let's go ahead and dive right into boundaries. Boundaries as a business owner can be really complicated because in America, if you're in America, I assume you're in America, but if you're in America, we actually don't have great boundaries as a society. America is very much all access to everybody at any time, yet at the same time, we actually live in a relatively impersonal country. Like, we're small talk. We're not necessarily getting really deep into people's lives or issues. And Americans also don't conceptualize other people in the sense that they are just as complex and are living just as busy lives as we are. We're very idealistic. And what that means is, especially in the business world, we think of other people who are providing a service to us as a business owner or an employee. We regard them less as people and more as a business, treating somebody personally like a business instead of treating them like a person who's working for or in a business. And this can be really problematic for service providers and small business owners, as well as people who work for large corporations. So what this means is people, when they're looking at you as a service provider or a small business, they're not seeing you as a person. They're seeing you as a business and as somebody who is providing them a service that they are paying good money for. And that means they do not care about your boundaries. And it's not that they don't care because they're mean or anything. It's because in our country and in our society, they are not looking at you as a person. They're looking at you as a business in your relationship with them. That means that the way that you set boundaries is really important as a business owner. So a couple things you can do to set boundaries is have a scope of work in your contract. This is particularly important if you are a creative service provider or the projects that you're working on could get really out of hand, or they could get really muddled, or if it's an easy business where somebody could come and just keep asking for a little bit more here and there, things can get really muddy, especially if your contract isn't rock solid or you're laying out every teeny tiny little detail of what you want to do. You know what? Maybe we're just going to do a gray wall. That looks fine. I'm probably actually going to leave that in the video because it's kind of funny and it's real life. All right, circling back to scope of work. Having a scope of work in your contract that you can just explain in non-contracty lingo exactly what you're going to be doing, what your client can expect, and what you expect from your client is really going to help you to tell them at some point, hey, that's actually outside of my scope of work. That's going to be an extra fee, or maybe we could do that on a whole separate project. I don't have the bandwidth for that right now, etc., etc. And then you get to decide how you're going to manage your time and manage that situation. Another thing that's really going to help is having an expectations clause in your contract. And what this is going to do is it's going to lay out the expectations that you have for your client and that your client should have of you. So this is where you can put in, these are my working hours. I do not work on the weekends. Do not text me because if it's in my phone on a text message, it is going to disappear and I'm going to forget about it. All your communication needs to come via email or however you want to set it up. And another thing too you can do here is put the expectations for your client. So if you are providing a service or working in an industry where you need feedback from people, this is where you can say, hey, I need feedback from you in X amount of time to be able to keep this project on track. I need feedback from you within 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever. You have to show up for our Zoom calls. If you don't show up for 3 Zoom calls, you're done, like the contract is terminated. This is where you can put all that kind of stuff in there on a case-by-case basis, but it doesn't need to be in your standard contract lingo, so you're not having to edit that all the time, because when you put this kind of stuff in your contract or in a proposal and they're signing off on it, they're also agreeing to that scope of work and all of the expectations that you're going to have for them. So that can really save your butt. So moving on from setting boundaries with clients In a contract setting, let's talk about setting boundaries with people in real life. And when people talk about boundaries, a lot of times we lean towards this concept that we can actually control the way somebody else treats us. And that's not how boundaries work. You have absolutely zero control of how somebody else treats you or reacts to you or wants to talk to you or what they ask of you. You do not have control over other people. The only thing you have control over is how you respond to them. A boundary means you are going to say, when someone speaks to you in a way that you do not like, a boundary is, we will not continue this relationship. Your contract is void. We will not work together. We are done. I will not be in contact with you anymore. That's a boundary because you can only control what you can do. So in setting boundaries with a client, when you have said as a boundary, I do not work on the weekends, I will contact you back on Monday, anything after hours or over the weekend, that doesn't mean that your client cannot contact you on the weekends, because maybe they get some work done on the weekends and they send you a bunch of stuff on the weekend. That's fine. They're not crossing your boundary by doing that. You can cross your own boundary by responding to them on the weekend or responding to them outside of your work hours. And that's on you because you set the boundary for yourself that you are not going to work after hours or on the weekend. So if you decide to do that, you have crossed the boundary. Your client did not cross a boundary by contacting you on the weekends because they already had the expectation and they know they are not working on the weekend. They're going to get back to me when they want to get back to me. And clients are going to look at your boundaries and they're going to say, okay, cool, this is what I expect from them. These are their boundaries. And then your client is really just going to do whatever they want to do because that's how people are. And that's kind of how our society works. Now, if your client contacts you on a weekend, you get back to them on Monday and they get frustrated about the fact that you did not work on the weekend and contact them, you can just reestablish your own boundary by saying, I don't work on the weekends. It's right here in our expectations. If you're confused about our working relationship or my hours or anything, please refer back to the contract we signed. But this is what it is. And you've held fast in your boundary and you've set that boundary with your client. Your client can do whatever they want with it, but you don't work on the weekends. So you will not be working on the weekends. You set that boundary. That's how boundaries work with clients, and it's also how it works in your personal life too. If for some reason you have a client who is just like constantly pushing your boundaries and getting mad at you, you have every right to just offboard them as a client. You can fire a client. You should actually have in your contract somewhere that says, hey, if this relationship isn't working, it can be terminated. So as far as client communication goes, again, you can only control the boundaries you set as far as your involvement in the boundaries go. You can't control your clients. So let's talk a little bit too about work-life boundaries, which is completely in your control. A lot of business owners feel out of control in their personal life because they think, I have to work constantly to make my business successful. And that's not true. You don't have to do that. You can take nights and weekends off. You could work a typical 9-to-5 schedule. You can set your own hours because you are a business owner. And most likely, if you're watching my page, you are a service provider, probably in the creative industry, but you're not necessarily working in a storefront or in a brick and mortar or at a restaurant or anything like that. You're most likely a service provider. So that's kind of who I'm talking to right now. You have total control over your schedule, your working environment, where you want to work and when you want to work for the most part. You're going to have a lot of control over all of those factors. So all you need to do is decide exactly what you want to do, how you want to do it, sign off at a certain time each night, and take a rest day once a week at least. When I was new in my business, I would literally work like 24/7. I would work at an office at my 9-to-5 job all day long. I would come home, I would work at my desk in my apartment for a couple hours, and then I would bring my computer to the couch to spend time with my husband while he watched TV and I could keep working. I worked constantly and it was horrible. And I don't want to see anybody else go through that or feel like they have to do that because you really don't. You need to be limiting your time. And if your time is getting eaten up, you might need to limit your clients. And one of the ways you can do that is raising your prices, taking on less projects for the same amount of money until you get to a point where you can quit your job. Once you are working full-time in your business, boundaries become a lot more important. There's a lot more stress on you. Your mental load is a lot more because it's like just your business now. Like that's where you're getting your money and your livelihood and your success and your life and all that kind of stuff. And it can get really out of control. You have to take a break and take a breath and like lean back and relax every once in a while, or else you're just going to work yourself into the ground. And what's going to happen is your mental health is going to suffer, your relationships are going to suffer, and in the end, your business is going to suffer. Because you, as the sole business owner, if you're not in a good space, your business isn't going to be in a good space. You're going to feel resentful, you're not going to do a good job, and you're not going to want to show up, and that's really bad for your business. So you have to take care of yourself. I, at this point in my business, don't actually start my workday until about noon, which is kind of crazy. I've finally gotten to a point where I'm working part-time in my business, making 6 figures, and it's a really cool place to be. But I've worked for a decade to get here. So I don't want you looking at me and being like, oh my gosh, I can make 6 figures and work part-time just like that. Because I didn't do it just like that. It took me a long time to get here. But I've earned this space and I've earned this work-life balance now. So in the mornings, I wake up, I go to the gym, I have some coffee, I eat my breakfast, I take my time. I do my personal stuff in the mornings before I even start my workday. Because that guarantees that my life I'm taken care of, and then I do my work, and then in the afternoons I'm done in time for dinner. My husband usually wraps up his workday between 6 and 7. Oh, there goes my dog. And so that's why I usually work until 6 or 7 until he's done. And then when we're both done working, we cook dinner and hang out for the rest of the afternoon. We also take our weekends off together. So we can go hang out in our camper, we can take a trip, we can do a long weekend, or we can just hang at the house, hang out with our friends and our family. We also have other businesses that we run together. So that is why these boundaries are so important for me personally. So I'm not putting stuff off for late at night or rushing to get things done, because I already know my boundaries are I'm not working after 6 or 7 o'clock and I'm not working on the weekends. So I schedule my time better because I'm giving myself less hours to work in the day. You are going to have different reasons for your own boundaries, and you're going to have different boundaries from the ones I have, and that's totally okay. But sit and think, what's my ideal work-life balance? What can I do to get more time back, feel better, and have more energy in my business? And it's going to serve you so well. So I hope this is encouraging for you to go out and set boundaries, think about it, test it out. And my piece of advice for you is make sure that your boundaries are set and they are clearly explained to your clients when you start your working relationship. Sorry, my dog. Okay, get out there, set some boundaries. Hey, knock it off. Why are you barking? Don't bark. All right, this is one of our dogs, Luna, and maybe one of these days I'll get Bentley up here and you can meet him too. She is very sweet and very barky, and she's needy. Look at this. Look at this. Baba.